Hello from Mindset Daily, wishing you a day full of health, peace, and happiness. Thank you for watching the Mindset Daily channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe to support us. Thank you so much. What if the most powerful person in the room is the one who says nothing at all? What if true strength isn't loud? It's silent, still, and watching. And what if the one who stays calm in chaos ends up controlling everything? They insult you. They spread lies behind your back. They disappear the moment you need them most. But you don't flinch. You don't shout. You don't even react. Why? Because your mind is trained. A trained mind doesn't chase every thought that passes by. It doesn't get pulled under by emotional waves. It observes. It pauses. It waits. In a world that constantly tries to trigger you, the man who stays calm, the one who refuses to be provoked, is often the most dangerous person in the room. This isn't weakness. It's not indifference. It's precision, discipline, power. When emotions rise and chaos swirls like a storm, will you be the one who loses control, or will you become the stillness at the center, the eye of the storm? Train your mind, and you train your reality. Rule your emotions, and you rule your life. In just a few moments, you'll uncover the first key to mastering mental control, learning how to remain unshaken no matter what happens. Because the greatest war you'll ever fight won't be out there in the world. It will be fought in silence, deep inside your own mind. And if you win there, you win everywhere. Think about it. Some of the most successful people in history understood this. Take Thomas Edison. He failed more than 10,000 times while creating the electric light bulb. And when his entire laboratory burned to the ground, decades of research lost forever, he didn't break down. At 67 years old, standing in front of the flames, he turned to his son and said, "Go get your mother. She'll never see anything like this again," Edison said. And the next morning, while calmly surveying the smoldering ruins of everything he had built, he didn't mourn. He didn't curse. Instead, he declared, "There's great value in disaster. All our mistakes are burned up. Thank God we can start anew." Now pause for a moment. Can you imagine standing in the ashes of everything you worked for and still saying thank you? That's not just resilience. That's power. And here's the truth. You have that same power within you. Right now, the ability to look chaos in the face and remain steady. When your mind is calm, you see clearly. Where others see destruction, you see opportunity. Where others fall apart, you stay composed and lead. This is how you begin building a mind that doesn't just survive pressure, but thrives in it. When your mind becomes a place of clarity instead of a prison of panic, everything changes. It becomes a tool, not a trap. And it starts with one undeniable truth. Your state of mind creates your reality. Your situation doesn't dictate your mindset. Your mindset dictates your situation. This is the first principle you must embrace if you want to develop unshakable calm in the face of any storm. And it all begins with controlled attention. When life overwhelms you, you need a method, not motivation, to get back to center. Controlled attention is that method. It works by guiding your focus away from chaos and onto something constructive. It's simple, but it's powerful. The moment you feel pressure building, when anxiety starts to creep in, stop. Interrupt the pattern. Your first step is awareness. Remind yourself that your thoughts, not the situation, are what control your emotional state. Then breathe, not shallow, panic breaths, but deep, deliberate ones. This small act disrupts the loop of negative thinking and creates space to respond, not react. Now ask yourself this critical question. What is one constructive action I can take right now that's fully within my control? That single question is like a lighthouse in the fog. It pulls your focus away from the storm outside and places it back where it belongs, within your circle of influence. Because no matter how wild the world becomes, your power lies in how you direct your attention. President Calvin Coolidge was known not for dramatic speeches or fiery emotion, but for something far rarer: unshakable calm. Crises that would have rattled most leaders barely moved him. When someone once asked how he managed to stay so composed under pressure, his answer was quiet but profound. If you see 10 troubles coming down the road, you can be sure that 9 will run into the ditch before they reach you. What a powerful image. How many of our fears ever truly arrive? How often do we exhaust ourselves fighting shadows that never take form? Coolidge understood a truth we often forget. Most of what we worry about never comes to pass. And even when it does, worry never helps. Only action does. That's why the final step of the controlled attention principle is to take one clear, decisive action. Even if it's small, even if it seems insignificant, action grounds the mind. It pulls us out of fear and puts us back in motion. Andrew Carnegie knew this well. During the financial panic of 1873, when the entire economy trembled and his fortune stood on the edge of collapse, he didn't waste time in fear. He didn't spiral into panic or play the victim. He focused on what he could do next. One step, one solution, one move forward. That mindset turned potential ruin into renewed success. This is the power of motion. When you take immediate action, you break the cycle of helplessness. You shift from being a passive observer of disaster to an active force within your own life. And here's the deeper truth. Your mind cannot hold focused action and fearful thought at the same time. One always drives out the other. So choose action, and calm will follow. But the journey doesn't end there. This principle doesn't just help you stay calm in the moment. It's how you begin building something even more powerful: your emotional fortress. Think about it. Your emotional state shouldn't be at the mercy of external chaos. It must become a stronghold, a structure you design and reinforce day by day, thought by thought. You don't build a fortress in the middle of a war. You build it in times of peace, brick by brick. And the same is true for emotional strength. Emotional mastery isn't about denying how you feel. It's about deciding what stays and what goes. It's learning to recognize which emotions serve your growth and which only drain you. Helen Keller embodied this with stunning clarity. Deaf and blind since childhood, she faced obstacles few could even imagine. Yet she didn't allow bitterness or despair to shape her story. Through sheer emotional resilience, she not only graduated college with honors, but became a voice for millions, a speaker, an author, and an icon of strength. So ask yourself, if she could build that kind of inner power in total darkness, what might be possible for you? When asked how she achieved so much despite unimaginable limitations, Helen Keller offered a response that reveals the core of her strength. She said, "I long to accomplish great and noble tasks, but it is my chief duty to accomplish humble tasks as though they were great and noble." Those words weren't just poetic. They were a blueprint. Her emotional fortress wasn't built overnight. It didn't emerge from a single act of courage. It was constructed slowly, deliberately, through hundreds, even thousands of small choices. Each time she chose to focus on possibility rather than limitation, she laid another stone in that unbreakable foundation. And here's the lesson. You can begin building your own emotional fortress right now. It starts with something deceptively simple: your mental diet. Just as you wouldn't fill your body with junk food and expect peak performance, you can't fill your mind with negativity and expect peace, clarity, or strength. What you feed your mind becomes what you feel, what you see, and ultimately who you are. So what are you consuming mentally? Is it fear-driven headlines, mindless distractions, and stories of limitation? Or is it content that fuels growth, expands your vision, and reminds you of your own power? Feed your mind stories of those who triumphed over adversity. Expose yourself to ideas that stretch what you believe is possible. Seek out perspectives that emphasize solutions, not problems. The more you do this, the more your mind becomes anchored in hope, not fear. As you consistently apply this mental discipline, you'll start to notice something, a quiet strength building inside you. An inner calm that doesn't shake when the world does. That's the foundation of your emotional fortress. And like every fortress, it starts with a strong foundation. That foundation is definite purpose, a clear, compelling reason for why you do what you do. Think about it. Every great figure in history, those who changed the world, those who rose from nothing, had one thing in common. A burning desire that anchored them when the storms came. A mission that was bigger than the moment. So ask yourself, what is your definite purpose? What vision is so important that it can guide your thoughts when chaos tries to steal your focus? Without that purpose, even the strongest emotional structure will crack under pressure. But when you build from purpose, you become immovable. And the walls of that fortress, they're not built from luck or talent. They're constructed through the habit of controlled thought. This isn't something you're born with. It's a skill, a discipline. And like any discipline, it grows stronger with practice. Emotional strength, like physical strength, is not built by chance. It is forged through repetition, through deliberate, intentional practice. That's why developing mental resilience must become part of your daily routine. Every morning, before the world makes its demands, ask yourself, what is the emotional tone I want to set for this day? Will you let random circumstances decide how you feel? Or will you choose thoughts that support your highest self? This simple act of setting your emotional intent may seem small, but over time, it creates powerful momentum. Just as lifting weights daily sculpts the body, choosing your thoughts each morning sculpts a resilient mind. And while the walls of your emotional fortress give you structure, your perspective, the windows through which you view the world, must remain clean and clear. How you interpret what happens around you determines whether you collapse under pressure or rise above it. Charles M. Schwab, the great industrialist, understood this better than most. During intense financial turmoil, when panic swept through others, he stayed composed. Why? Because he consistently asked himself a question that reframed everything. What opportunity lies hidden in this difficulty? That mindset was his secret weapon. It gave him vision where others saw only chaos. And you have that power too. Your perspective is always yours to control, regardless of what's happening outside you. But just as important as your outlook is the gate to your fortress, the filter that determines what you allow into your mind. Every book you read, every news headline you absorb, every conversation you engage in, it all either strengthens your emotional stability or chips away at it. Even Thomas Jefferson understood the importance of mental filtration. He once said, "Nothing can now be believed which is seen in a newspaper." That wasn't cynicism, it was discipline. Jefferson chose carefully what information he allowed to influence his thinking. You must do the same, especially during moments when your inner balance feels vulnerable. And then, there's the courtyard of your fortress, your space of restoration and renewal. This is where the garden of gratitude grows. It may sound poetic, but it's deeply practical. Gratitude is one of the most stabilizing emotional forces you can cultivate. Why? Because no negative emotion can thrive in the presence of sincere thankfulness. Even in your darkest moments, there is always something left to honor. Your breath, your mind, your lessons, your second chance. Andrew Carnegie, again facing potential financial ruin, chose not to dwell on what he might lose. Instead, he focused on what remained, his experience, his network, and his ability to rebuild. That shift in focus didn't just keep him calm. It gave him the power to act. And finally, atop it all, is the watchtower of your emotional fortress, the vantage point that keeps guard over destructive thoughts. It is here that you observe what enters your mind before it can take root. Because unchecked thoughts become beliefs, and beliefs become the architecture of your life. So the question remains, are you actively guarding your mind, or leaving it unprotected to whatever the world throws at it? From the watchtower of your emotional fortress, you gain a unique advantage, perspective. And from this vantage point, your responsibility becomes clear to detect negative thought patterns before they take root and spread. The moment you sense worry creeping in, fear tightening its grip, or resentment beginning to form, you must take deliberate action. Redirect your mental energy towards something constructive, something purposeful. This isn't about pretending everything is fine. It's not blind optimism. It's the strategic use of your most precious inner resource, your attention, because whatever you focus on grows. Will you feed the thoughts that weaken you, or the ones that fortify your mind? It's important to remember that your emotional fortress is not meant to isolate you from the world. You didn't build it to hide. You built it for strength. Its walls aren't there to shut life out, but to protect your inner calm so that you can face life head-on with clarity, poise, and power. True emotional mastery isn't measured by how little difficulty you experience. It's measured by how composed and effective you remain in the midst of that difficulty. Anyone can feel balanced when life is easy, but what happens when everything starts to unravel? That's the real test. So start today. Lay one stone, plant one thought, then another, and another. Over time, you'll build a foundation so strong that no outside circumstance, no failure, rejection, or loss can shake who you are at your core. But here's something often overlooked. Strength isn't built alone. The fourth pillar of emotional mastery is emotional support. The path to greatness, whether in mindset, achievement, or emotional stability, is too complex to walk entirely by yourself. That's why forming a mastermind alliance is not just wise, it's essential. This alliance isn't about surrounding yourself with just anyone. It's about consciously building a circle of individuals who challenge, support, and elevate you. People who help you stay grounded during storms and focused on your highest vision. History is filled with examples of this principle in action. Time and again, the world's most successful people relied on close, intentional relationships to keep them aligned. Think about it. Henry Ford didn't have the most impressive academic resume, but what he lacked in formal education, he made up for in vision and collaboration. He surrounded himself with brilliant thinkers, people who sharpened his perspective, fueled his ideas, and helped him stay the course through relentless obstacles. So ask yourself, who is in your circle? Are you walking alone, or walking with people who remind you of your purpose when you forget it? Because when your fortress is reinforced not only by your thoughts, but by your alliances, you don't just stand firm. You rise stronger. When peers in the automotive industry mocked Henry Ford's concept of the Model T, he didn't fold under their criticism. Why? Because he wasn't standing alone. He had surrounded himself with a network of encouraging, insightful minds, people who believed in progress, who reminded him of his vision when others couldn't see it. That circle didn't just offer praise. It helped sustain his resolve when doubt crept in. In the same way, your emotional resilience will grow stronger, more stable, when you intentionally surround yourself with people who bring clarity, stability, and inner strength into your life. Just like building a fortress, you don't construct this support system by chance. You do it with purpose. So where do you begin? Start by identifying at least 3 individuals who genuinely embody the mental disciplines and emotional maturity you aspire to develop. Look for people whose actions, not just their words, reflect the mindset you want to master. Once identified, reach out to them with intent. Don't just aim for casual conversation, build purposeful connections. Ask for regular interaction. Maybe it's a weekly phone call, a monthly coffee, or even quarterly deep dive sessions. The key is consistency, and the focus is collective growth. Be transparent. Share not just your wins, but your struggles too. Vulnerability, when met with respect and support, becomes a catalyst for transformation. That's how authentic connections are formed, through honesty, not perfection. Because true emotional support isn't about someone always having the answers. It's about having people around you who will walk beside you when you have questions, people who help you think clearly when your mind is clouded. No great achievement in history came from complete isolation. Not one. And your pursuit of unshakable inner peace follows the same principle. It requires people, the right people, who elevate you through their wisdom, feedback, and steady encouragement. But choose wisely. Your mastermind alliance should include individuals with a range of perspectives, but with shared core values that align with your deeper mission. These aren't just friends. They're trusted minds who offer truth without judgment, challenge without criticism, and encouragement without ego. Seek those who celebrate your progress, but aren't afraid to challenge your blind spots. Those who offer clarity when your vision blurs, and who hold you accountable, not out of pressure, but out of belief in your potential. When you meet regularly, whether weekly check-ins, monthly goal reviews, or occasional intensive retreats, you create rhythm. And with rhythm comes momentum. With momentum comes growth. So ask yourself, who in your life helps you stay anchored when everything around you shifts? Who pushes you toward your best self? Not with force, but with presence and purpose. Because your emotional fortress isn't just built by what's inside you. It's fortified by who stands beside you. When it comes to building powerful mastermind relationships, it's not about how often you meet. It's about how consistently and intentionally you show up. Consistency outweighs frequency. A single, focused meeting held regularly will serve you more than scattered, high-energy conversations that lack follow-through. So how do you give structure to these gatherings? It begins with clarity of purpose. Shape your meetings around specific topics, meaningful updates, and collaborative problem-solving. This isn't about venting. It's about transformation. This structured, disciplined approach takes ordinary friendships and elevates them into partnerships with purpose. And the most effective mastermind groups share one defining principle: reciprocity. Each person contributes. Each person receives. That balance is essential. When you share your challenges and breakthroughs openly, others learn. When they share, you gain perspective you might never have seen on your own. This exchange of real experiences fosters not only wisdom, it builds trust. And over time, that trust becomes the bedrock of your growth. Because what happens when life shakes you? When doubts creep in and clarity vanishes? That's when your alliance matters most. These are the people who speak truth when your emotions distort reality. They remind you of your past victories when fear says you failed. And they hold faith in your potential when you temporarily forget it yourself. And here's something important to remember. The best mastermind relationships don't form overnight. They evolve naturally over time. At first, your conversations may stay in the realm of business, career, or productivity. That's normal. But if nurtured, those connections can deepen, expanding to support you emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Allow that progression. Don't try to force intimacy too quickly. Trust is built slowly, layer by layer. Think of it like building a fire. You start with sparks, then embers, then finally a strong, lasting flame. And thanks to modern technology, there are no longer borders to your growth circle. Your mastermind alliance doesn't have to be limited by geography. Some of the most powerful support systems today are global, connected through video calls, group chats, shared documents, and scheduled check-ins that create real momentum, regardless of time zone. So ask yourself, are you building the kind of circle that holds you to your highest standard, even when you're tired? Are you surrounded by people who see the future you and won't let you settle for less? Because when you commit to structured, consistent, and mutual growth with the right people, your emotional fortress doesn't just hold firm. It expands beyond anything you could build alone. With today's technology, your mastermind circle is no longer confined by geography. Virtual meetings now connect like-minded individuals across continents, linking people who might never have crossed paths otherwise. You can build a mastermind alliance that spans cities, countries, even time zones. But no matter the format, virtual or in person, the foundation remains the same: trust, commitment, and a shared purpose. Because let's be clear, emotional mastery isn't a casual pursuit. It mirrors every meaningful achievement in life. It requires deliberate practice, the support of a strong community, and a steady, unwavering effort over time. And this is where your carefully chosen alliance becomes more than just a support system. It becomes both a catalyst and a companion. These are the people who help you accelerate your progress. Yes, but more importantly, they're the ones who stand by you when setbacks come, when doubt whispers, when fatigue sets in. So how do you begin? Start simple. Make a list, 3 to 5 people who come to mind when you think of emotional maturity, clarity, and quiet strength. People who live the mindset you want to grow into. Then initiate. Reach out. Start honest conversations. Explore the idea of forming a mastermind, not just to talk, but to transform. Because the partnerships you build from that intention might just become some of the most valuable relationships in your entire journey toward unshakable emotional resilience and lasting success. But don't stop there. This path will also demand something even more personal: mastery of your internal dialogue. Think about it. The most important conversations you'll ever have are not with other people. They're the ones happening inside your own mind. In moments of pressure, when plans fall apart or life turns upside down, what do you say to yourself? Do you amplify fear, or do you remind yourself of your strength? That voice in your head is shaping more than just your mood. It's shaping your perception of reality. And your perception is, in many ways, your experience. This isn't about repeating empty affirmations. It's not about blindly ignoring what's hard. It's about the strategic direction of your attention, the conscious decision to respond with clarity, not chaos. Because here's a truth most people miss. The quality of your life is not defined by what happens to you. It's defined by how you interpret what happens. I've studied the lives and mental patterns of more than 500 of the most accomplished individuals in history. And across all of them, there was one common thread. Not talent, not luck, but the ability to control the conversation within. So ask yourself, when life gets loud, what does your inner voice say? And is that voice building your future or holding it back? The thoughts you entertain most often don't just influence your mood. They shape the mental pathways through which all future thoughts must travel. Every repeated idea lays down another track, and over time, those tracks become highways. Highways that your mind will instinctively follow, whether toward growth or toward fear. Consider Theodore Roosevelt. As a child, he was frail, asthmatic, and constantly battling illness. But he refused to let that narrative define him. Instead, he rewrote the script inside his mind. "I'm the captain of my soul," he declared, not once, but repeatedly, until his inner world became stronger than his physical weakness. His body didn't lead, his mind did, and eventually his body followed. That's the quiet power of internal language. What you say to yourself becomes what you believe, and what you believe shapes how you act, how you feel, and ultimately, what you experience. Tell yourself, "This is too much," and your brain will generate overwhelming emotions. But tell yourself, "If it overcomes, I'll figure this out too," and suddenly your mind gets to work, not on panic, but on solutions. This isn't guesswork. It's not a motivational catchphrase. It's a principle that operates with the precision of mathematics. The subconscious mind does not discriminate. It accepts whatever your conscious mind repeatedly feeds it, constructive or destructive, hopeful or hopeless. It simply says yes and begins working to turn that thought into your reality, day and night, without pause. That's the power, and that's also the danger. So, how you take control? Start by becoming conscious of the phrases you use most often. Audit your internal language. What do you say to yourself when something goes wrong? When the unexpected hits? When your plans fall apart? Write those phrases down. Then ask, do these words build strength or feed fear? And once you're aware, replace them intentionally. If you usually say, I can't handle this, shift it to, this is tough, but I'm taking it one step at a time. You're not denying reality. You're anchoring yourself inside it while pointing toward a better outcome. Instead of collapsing into, everything is falling apart, try, this is a turning point. I'm being challenged to find a new way. One statement builds tension. The other builds focus. The situation hasn't changed, but your interpretation has. And that one shift can change everything. Through years of observation and study, I've come to a striking conclusion. Most failure doesn't stem from a lack of talent or intelligence. It stems from destructive mental habits, thought patterns so subtle, so persistent, that they quietly sabotage potential before it ever has a chance to grow. A mind that constantly fixates on limitations will, over time, become trapped by them. It creates a cage made of its own beliefs and eventually forgets that the door was never really locked. On the other hand, a mind that searches for solutions, no matter how difficult the problem, eventually uncovers them. Why? Because your focus acts like a compass. It directs your thoughts, your energy, and ultimately your emotions. And your words? They're the architects of that focus. What you say to yourself again and again becomes what you believe. And what you believe defines how you respond to everything. That's why mastering your self-talk is one of the most important disciplines you'll ever develop. When you learn to shape your inner language, you unlock the ability to stay grounded, even when life is anything but stable. Emotional control, after all, isn't about ignoring what's happening around you. It's about responding from a place of clarity rather than chaos. That control is the mark of leadership and the root of real personal power. And here's something most people never realize. Your subconscious mind is always listening. But more than that, it's taking your words literally. When you say, I'm exhausted, your body begins to align with that message. But if in the same moment you say, I'm rising to this challenge, your physiology starts to shift accordingly. Language doesn't just describe your experience, it actively creates it. So ask yourself, would you hand out medicine without reading the label? Of course not. Then why speak carelessly to the most powerful system in your life, your own mind? Choose your words with precision, with care, like a pharmacist handling prescriptions, because their effects are just as potent. And here's the most empowering discovery I've made from studying hundreds of high performers. You can change your life by changing how you think and speak. This is not poetic theory. It's psychological truth. The best part? You don't need anyone's permission. You don't need special tools or a perfect past. This is a form of power that's available to everyone right now. No matter where you started, no matter what you've been through, your thoughts are yours to command. That's what makes this the ultimate form of freedom, the one true democracy. Every person, regardless of circumstance, has the same opportunity to choose dominant thoughts that serve their highest potential. So begin today. Listen to yourself. Observe the words that come up when you're under pressure or facing setbacks. Replace the language of limitation with the voice of deliberate choice. Your external situation might not shift overnight, but your experience of it will. And over time, that shift becomes momentum. That momentum becomes change. Eventually, even the most unyielding external conditions will have no choice but to reshape themselves to match the power of your inner voice. When you master your thoughts and you learn to master your words, something powerful happens. You begin to master your destiny. Because between every stimulus and response, there is a moment, a pause. And in that pause lies your greatest power, the power to choose how you respond. This space between what happens and how you act may seem small, but it's where all your growth and personal freedom exist. While most people react instantly, letting old habits and primal instincts take over, you have the ability to train your mind to do something radically different, to respond deliberately instead of reacting impulsively. That single shift from reaction to response marks a clear dividing line. On one side are those who are constantly pushed around by circumstance. On the other, those who maintain their composure, no matter what chaos swirls around them. Abraham Lincoln was one of those people. He was known for a unique habit, something he called his hot letters. When someone betrayed him, frustrated him, or made a poor decision, he would write a letter, pouring out every ounce of his anger. But he never sent it. He would put it in a drawer, walk away, and let it be. Why? Because that simple act allowed him to process the emotion privately, without unleashing it in a way that could damage relationships or his leadership. Lincoln understood something many people never learn. Acknowledge your emotional reaction, but don't let it dictate your public response. His method was more than just emotional control. It was strategic restraint, a moment of self-command in the space between stimulus and response. But why is that space so difficult for most of us to hold? The answer is biological. Our brains are wired to react fast. It's a survival mechanism handed down from our ancestors. When danger appeared, the amygdala, the brain's fear center, would activate instantly, triggering the fight or flight response long before the logical part of the brain could catch up. And even though the threats we face today are rarely life or death, that same circuitry still fires when we feel emotionally threatened, embarrassed, disrespected, or out of control. That's why you might lash out, shut down, or say something you regret, because your ancient brain hijacked the moment. But here's the good news. This pattern is not permanent. You can train yourself through conscious awareness and repeated practice to hold that space longer, to recognize when the emotion is rising, to feel it without becoming it, and to wait until your higher reasoning has returned before you act. So ask yourself, how different would your relationships, your decisions, and your outcomes be if you responded with clarity instead of reacting with heat? Because the more you develop your deliberate response method, the more you take control, not just of the moment, but of your entire trajectory. The space between stimulus and response is not a fixed distance. It's elastic. It can be expanded, and with practice it will. Every time you pause before reacting, you're doing more than just exercising self-control. You're literally strengthening the neural pathways that favor thoughtful, measured responses over emotional, knee-jerk reactions. And the best part? This process compounds. Each pause leads to a better response. Better responses lead to better outcomes. And better outcomes reinforce the value of pausing in the first place. It becomes a virtuous cycle, one that builds emotional maturity and mental resilience over time. So how can you begin to cultivate this deliberate response method in your daily life? You don't need a complex routine. You only need a simple practice. The next time you're faced with a triggering moment, whether it's a critical comment, a missed opportunity, or unexpected pressure, pause. Silently count to 10 before you speak or act. Those 10 seconds are not about delay. They're about clarity. In that brief window, ask yourself, will my natural reaction serve the outcome I truly want? Or will it simply satisfy a temporary emotion that may pass in moments? If the answer is no, then choose differently. Respond not from the emotion you feel in the moment, but from the character you are committed to becoming. That one conscious shift puts you back in control. And while avoiding a regrettable outburst might seem like a worthy goal in itself, the benefits of mastering this pause go far beyond that. Scientific research confirms what ancient wisdom has always taught. Individuals with strong emotional regulation tend to have more fulfilling relationships, lower levels of chronic stress, better health outcomes, and greater mental clarity. In fact, some studies even link emotional regulation to increased lifespan. So, in creating just a few seconds of space between what happens and how you respond, you're not only improving the moment, you're quite literally rewiring your brain for a better life. And in professional settings, this ability becomes a true competitive edge. Think about the leaders you admire. Are they the ones who explode under pressure? Or the ones who stay grounded, composed, and clear-headed when everything around them becomes uncertain? Leaders who master the deliberate response method inspire trust. They make decisions anchored in principles, not driven by pressure. Their steady presence creates safety. Their composure becomes contagious, and their example sets a standard that others naturally want to follow. But let's be honest, this isn't always easy. There will be moments when the emotional urge feels too strong to pause. Times when the 10 seconds feel like an eternity. But that's the point. The discomfort is the training. And with each repetition, you get stronger. In moments of intense emotion, remembering to pause can feel nearly impossible. When anger floods your chest or stress tightens your breath, instinct wants to take over. So don't start with the hardest moments. Begin where the stakes are low. Notice the small annoyances in your day. A delayed email, a rude comment, a traffic jam, and use them as practice grounds. These moments may seem insignificant, but they are powerful training opportunities. Every time you catch yourself and choose to pause, you're rewiring your brain. You're conditioning your nervous system to hold space before it reacts. And as that skill grows, something unexpected happens. The paradox of the deliberate response method is this. When you slow down your reaction in the moment, you actually accelerate your long-term progress. Why? Because each thoughtful response reinforces your identity as someone in control, someone aligned with their highest values. Every choice to pause adds to your momentum. You start building not just better habits, but a stronger version of yourself. Over time, the space between stimulus and response expands. And with that expansion comes greater freedom. Freedom to stay grounded in moments that would have once triggered you. Freedom to choose intention over impulse. That space becomes more than just a mental tool. It becomes a sanctuary, a place where you return to yourself no matter how loud the world gets. It's where you reclaim power not through control of circumstances, but through control of your inner state. Because let's remember, between stimulus and response lies a space. Master that space, and you master yourself. And now, we move to the seventh benefit of this path. It develops mental calm. Here's something often overlooked in conversations about emotional mastery. Your mind and your body are not separate. They are two parts of a deeply connected system. What affects one inevitably influences the other. You can't expect mental calm while your body is tense, inflamed, or neglected. The state of your physiology shapes the way your brain interprets the world. Yet many people seeking emotional control focus only on mental exercises, forgetting that their physical state is the foundation of their emotional resilience. So ask yourself, how can I expect a calm mind if my body is running on stress, poor sleep, and zero recovery? This principle, though often ignored, is essential for anyone serious about mastering their inner world. And yet, this principle, so often underestimated, provides one of the most direct pathways to an unshakable mind. When your physical body is functioning at its best, your capacity to handle stress multiplies. Your threshold rises. The pressure that would break others becomes something you move through with steady composure. It's not about ignoring the stress. It's about being equipped to carry it. Take John D. Rockefeller, for example. He built one of the largest fortunes in history. He stood at the center of global finance and industry, constantly under scrutiny, surrounded by pressure from every direction. And yet, he lived to the age of 97. Why? In large part because he developed habits that preserved not only his physical health, but his mental calm. At the peak of his career, when the weight of his empire threatened his well-being, Rockefeller made radical changes. He began prioritizing rest, taking afternoon naps even in the midst of a packed schedule. He made time for daily walks in nature. He incorporated light physical activity as a non-negotiable part of his day. These weren't luxury routines, they were survival strategies. And they worked. Not only did these habits help restore his health, they stabilized his mind. They helped him remain centered when everything around him demanded panic. This connection between physical well-being and mental resilience is not just historical insight. It's a scientific truth. Modern neuroscience confirms what thinkers and leaders have intuited for centuries. Your physiological state is the platform upon which your psychological experience is built. A well-rested, nourished, balanced body creates the conditions for clear, calm, focused thought. On the other hand, a body in distress, a body starved of sleep, overloaded with caffeine, inflamed by poor nutrition or chronic tension, becomes a fertile ground for chaos. Stress hormones surge. Cognitive flexibility plummets. Emotional control slips through your fingers. Consider the high-performing executive who prides herself on grit and drive. She powers through 16-hour days on 4 hours of sleep and 3 cups of coffee, believing her mindset is bulletproof. But what happens when exhaustion catches up? When her body can no longer carry the burden of a schedule that ignores basic health? No amount of mental toughness can fully override a system in physiological breakdown. So ask yourself, are you giving your body what it needs to support the calm mind you're working so hard to build? Or are you unknowingly sabotaging your emotional stability by neglecting the very foundation beneath it? This is where real mastery begins, not just with thoughts and affirmations, but with the daily choices that align body and mind into one resilient system. Her perception of resilience is just that, an illusion. She believes she's strong, but in truth, she's operating at a fraction of her true capacity. Her body is locked in a continuous stress response, far more intense than the situation demands. And it's not because she lacks discipline. It's because she's ignoring the most basic biological foundation that mental clarity depends on. Meanwhile, her colleague, who commits to 8 full hours of restorative sleep, faces the exact same challenges. But his response is different. There's a calmness to his approach. He thinks more clearly, acts more decisively, and navigates pressure with significantly less internal friction. So what's the difference? It's not mindset alone, it's physiology. It's a foundation he's built that supports his emotional strength. You can build that same foundation, and it begins with 3 non-negotiable daily practices. These aren't extras or luxuries. They are essential tools for anyone seeking to cultivate mental calm while facing real-world demands. First, prioritize 7 to 8 hours of quality sleep each night. Sleep deprivation doesn't just make you tired. It lowers your stress threshold, weakens your immune system, impairs memory, and reduces your ability to regulate emotion. You can't expect a sharp mind when your body is running on fumes. Second, engage in at least 30 minutes of physical movement that gets your heart rate up. Whether it's a walk, a workout, or a stretch session, movement releases built-up tension from the body and stimulates the release of endorphins, your brain's natural mood stabilizers. Third, become intentional with your nutrition. Limit your intake of processed foods, stimulants, and anything that creates inflammation or spikes your energy artificially. The fuel you give your body either supports mental balance or sabotages it silently. Because the truth is, the pressure isn't going away. The responsibilities, the deadlines, the unexpected problems, they'll keep coming. But how you show up for them can change entirely. With the right physical foundation, pressure becomes something you can handle, not with panic or reactivity, but with grace and clarity. And this isn't a new idea. It's ancient wisdom. The Stoic philosophers understood this deeply. Epictetus, a man who lived most of his life enslaved, once said, "You cannot separate the health of the body from the tranquility of the mind." So ask yourself, are you treating your body as a barrier to inner peace or as its foundation? Because when your body is aligned, your mind follows. And from that place, true resilience isn't a performance. It becomes who you are. One of the most powerful aspects of this approach is its accessibility. You don't need advanced training in meditation or years of self-discipline to begin. While mastering deep states of mindfulness might take time, anyone, starting tonight, can make small adjustments that deliver immediate returns. You can improve your sleep hygiene today by shutting down screens an hour earlier or keeping your room cool and dark. You can step outside tomorrow morning for a brisk walk, even if only for 15 minutes. These aren't radical interventions, but they are effective. What surprises most people is just how quickly these simple physical practices begin to shift their mental and emotional state. Those who implement them consistently don't just report more calm. They often notice improved mental performance across the board. Thoughts become more organized. Emotional reactions lose their intensity. Creative insights begin to surface with greater ease. It's as if the internal noise floor lowers and your mind can finally hear itself think. That's the real power of aligning body and mind. When you build a strong physical foundation, you allow the finer, more subtle signals of your higher thinking to emerge, uninterrupted by fatigue, tension, or constant reactivity. And when setbacks inevitably happen, as they will, keep your perspective intact. One poor night of sleep, one missed workout, one rushed meal, none of that negates your progress. The goal is never perfection. The goal is consistency, a long-term, sustainable commitment to supporting your mind through how you treat your body. Think again of John D. Rockefeller. Even while overseeing world-shaping decisions and navigating relentless pressure, he never saw time spent on his physical wellness as a distraction from his mission. He saw it as an investment in his ability to show up with focus, stamina, and clarity day after day. By following that example, you're not just building a calmer mind for today. You're laying the groundwork for a resilient mind that can carry you through tomorrow's storms and the ones after that. And this leads us to the next principle: perspective. Because the way you see the world often matters more than the world itself. Your perception of any event, especially adversity, has more influence over your emotional state than the event itself. Two people can face the exact same challenge and walk away with entirely different internal experiences. Why? Because they interpret the situation through different lenses, through different frames. And this is where your power lies, in the ability to reframe. To take what is real and decide which part of that reality you will emphasize. Reframing isn't about ignoring facts. It's about choosing your focus within them. So ask yourself, are you highlighting what strengthens you or what weakens you? This shift alone can change the emotional weight of any situation. And the more you practice it, the more your mind becomes trained to stay centered, even in moments that once pulled you apart. Charles M. Schwab's story is a powerful reminder of what perspective can do. He began as a day laborer, rising through sheer determination and strategic thinking to become president of United States Steel Corporation and eventually one of the wealthiest men in America. But what set Schwab apart wasn't just his business acumen. It was his remarkable emotional composure, especially during times when others were falling apart. During the financial panics that crushed countless businesses and wiped out fortunes, Schwab remained steady. When asked how he managed to stay calm amid so much chaos, his answer revealed the true foundation of his strength. He said, "I have observed that those who achieve lasting success do so not by railing against unfortunate circumstances, but by finding the favorable aspects of those circumstances." That wasn't just optimism. It was strategic perspective. Rather than resist the storm, he studied it. Rather than curse adversity, he searched for what it might be revealing. His mindset didn't just help him survive challenges, it allowed him to transform them. This kind of perspective is timeless. It echoes through the teachings of philosophers, entrepreneurs, and leaders across generations. The most accomplished individuals throughout history have known a simple but powerful truth. Your mind can reshape any situation through interpretation. They understood that even in the darkest moments, there exists something of value, a lesson, a redirection, or even a hidden advantage. As one great thinker put it, every adversity carries with it the seed of an equivalent or greater benefit. But that benefit doesn't always show up with clarity. Sometimes, it's hidden beneath frustration or disguised as failure. Opportunity often wears the mask of temporary defeat, and only those who've trained their minds to look deeper, to search with intention, can uncover it. Ask yourself, when something goes wrong, do you stop at the pain, or do you look for the possibility? Those who habitually look past the obstacle, those who scan chaos for the threat of opportunity, are the ones who maintain emotional balance while others spiral into despair. That's what sets them apart. The most successful people, the ones who achieve extraordinary outcomes, are rarely those with the easiest path. They are the ones who've cultivated the mental discipline to turn pain into fuel and misfortune into forward movement. They don't just bounce back. They build forward from the exact spot where others give up. They understand something most people overlook. Failure is never final, unless you decide it is. With the right perspective, what seems like a dead end becomes feedback, not catastrophe. Setbacks aren't signals to quit. They're data points guiding your next move. This is the mindset that turns emotional spirals into strategic shifts. And the good news? You can harness that same power of perspective. Sometimes, it takes just one simple, but incredibly effective, question to create a mental shift. In 5 years, what will truly matter about how I handle this situation? By stepping out of the present moment and into future clarity, the emotional weight you're carrying begins to lighten. You realize that most of what you're anxious about now won't even register later. That question doesn't erase the challenge, but it shows you what's really worth your mental energy. Another powerful reframing question is this: what opportunity might be hidden inside this difficulty? It might seem like an odd question in the heat of a stressful moment, but that's exactly when it's most needed. Because remember, your eyes can only see what your mind is trained to look for. If your mind is only searching for pain, you'll find it. But if your mind is trained to seek possibility, then even the hardest moments reveal something useful. This ability to reframe is a skill, one that becomes especially critical during personal losses or professional failures. When your world feels unstable, reframing brings stability from within. The most successful individuals don't just keep going blindly. They persist, but they do so intelligently. They maintain unwavering faith in their ability to succeed while adjusting their strategy. They know that persistence without perspective is wasted effort. Because repeating the same approach while hoping for different results isn't resilience, it's resistance to learning. So how do you develop this power? Like anything else, through daily practice. Start by becoming aware of your thoughts. Monitor them, especially when emotions run high. Recognize that your emotional reactions aren't created by events alone, but by the meaning you assign to them. Negative emotions usually stem from negative interpretations, not necessarily negative realities. So when you're in the middle of a challenge, ask, what am I telling myself about this? Then consciously replace destructive thoughts with ones that are constructive, empowering, and realistic. At first, this may feel forced, but over time, this mental discipline becomes second nature. Eventually, your mind will default to seeing difficulty through a more resourceful lens. Your emotional balance will become more stable, your decisions more grounded, and your path more aligned with long-term growth. Remember this, true emotional mastery doesn't come from controlling what happens around you. It comes from controlling how you respond to what happens. That distinction between external control and internal command defines a deeper kind of freedom, because the person who has mastered their reaction is no longer at the mercy of circumstances. They no longer ride the emotional roller coaster of every external shift. Instead, they respond with clarity, with intention, with strength. As your perspective sharpens, challenges that once felt overwhelming begin to look different. They become opportunities, chances to practice restraint, to test your clarity, to demonstrate the mental strength and strategic vision you've been developing day by day. And something remarkable begins to happen. With consistent practice, your baseline changes. You'll notice that your capacity to remain calm in the face of stress starts to grow steadily. Where you once reacted with anxiety or frustration, you now pause. You assess. You adapt. Situations that used to trigger anger or doubt begin triggering curiosity instead. You start asking, what's really going on here? Or how can I navigate this differently? This shift represents one of the greatest personal achievements you can develop. The ability to stay composed regardless of what's unfolding around you. To remain centered, even when everything around you is off balance. But how do you accelerate this transformation? One of the most underutilized tools is also one of the most powerful: strategic visualization. Here's what neuroscience tells us. Your brain doesn't differentiate much between something vividly imagined and something physically experienced. In both cases, similar neural pathways are activated. That means when you rehearse a scenario in your mind with clarity and emotion, you're training your brain as if the event were real. This gives you an incredible edge. By visualizing challenging situations ahead of time and imagining yourself responding with calm, control, and confidence, you create a mental script your mind can follow when the moment arrives. In essence, you're pre-programming your response before pressure ever shows up. This mental rehearsal makes calm your default, not your exception. The neural pathways formed during visualization become the blueprint your brain draws from when the stakes are real. Legendary golfer Bobby Jones understood this well. Competing in the 1920s, a time of immense pressure and limited technology, Jones credited much of his composure and success to the power of visualization. Before every shot, he would play a mental movie, seeing in his mind the perfect swing, the precise arc of the ball, and its ideal landing. That movie, rehearsed hundreds of times in his mind, became the performance his body knew how to deliver. So ask yourself, what mental movies are you rehearsing? Are you preparing for chaos or calm? I never hit a shot, Bobby Jones once said, not even in practice, without having a very sharp and focused picture of it in my head. That level of mental preparation wasn't just superstition, it was science. And it's not limited to sports. This same technique, strategic visualization, can be applied to any area of your life where you want to stay calm, focused, and in control. The neurological science behind this is incredibly compelling. When you vividly imagine yourself performing an action, your brain doesn't just think about it in theory. It activates many of the same neural pathways as if you were physically doing it. It's a kind of mental training that primes your nervous system for real-world performance. In other words, your brain doesn't wait until game day to prepare. It begins practicing the moment you start visualizing with clarity. Athletes have leveraged this technique for decades. Numerous studies confirm that mental rehearsal can lead to significant improvements in actual physical performance. But its value extends far beyond the field or court. Consider a more universal challenge: public speaking. For many, even the thought of stepping in front of a crowd triggers a stress response. But what if, instead of rehearsing fear, you rehearse composure? By visualizing yourself delivering a speech, seeing yourself calm, hearing your voice steady, imagining the audience engaged, you begin to train your nervous system to associate the situation with confidence rather than anxiety. Over time, this practice rewires your default response. Instead of fight or flight, your body leans into the moment with readiness. The mental blueprint you've practiced becomes the behavior your brain naturally follows when the real opportunity arises. And what makes this technique especially powerful? It's accessibility. You don't need a coach, a gym, or special equipment. You can do this anywhere, before a big meeting, during your morning routine, even lying in bed before you fall asleep. Just a few minutes of intentional mental rehearsal each day can create lasting neurological changes. The secret to effective visualization lies in sensory richness. Don't just think about the moment. Feel it. See the details. Hear the sounds. Imagine the environment, your breathing, the tone in your voice, the way your body feels as you succeed. The more vivid the rehearsal, the stronger the neural imprint. So ask yourself, what moments are worth preparing for? What stressors could become opportunities if you practiced mastering them in advance? Don't just think about the situation, experience it. Bring it to life in your mind. Let your imagination go beyond the abstract. Ask yourself, what do I see? What do I hear? What physical sensations accompany my sense of calm? The more vivid and sensory-rich your visualization, the more effectively it rewires your nervous system. Your brain doesn't just respond to thoughts, it responds to experiences. So the more detailed and immersive your mental rehearsal, the more powerfully it will prepare you. And just as important as sensory detail is emotional engagement. As you visualize, allow yourself to truly feel the emotion you want to embody. Don't just picture yourself calm. Feel that calm. Feel the steadiness in your breath, the stillness in your chest, the clarity in your thoughts. If you're preparing for a difficult conversation, don't just rehearse the words. Rehearse the emotional state, a sense of groundedness, a stable tone, a mind that's sharp but not reactive. Your brain won't just record the scene. It will imprint the emotional state connected to it. That's the real secret. You're not just visualizing actions. You're rehearsing composure. So how do you begin? Start by choosing 3 situations in your life that consistently challenge your calm. Maybe it's a recurring conversation with someone who pushes your buttons. Maybe it's a high-pressure work scenario. Or maybe it's a personal circumstance that triggers anxiety or self-doubt. Spend just 5 minutes each day visualizing yourself navigating these moments with calm and clarity. See every detail, the room you're in, the faces of the people involved, the words being spoken. But most importantly, feel the internal steadiness you want to carry into those situations. With consistent repetition, something remarkable happens. When similar situations arise in real life, your mind and body don't default to panic. They remember the calm state you've rehearsed. You respond from a place you've already visited in your mind. And here's what matters most. Consistency trumps duration. It's not about long sessions. It's about showing up daily. Just a few minutes, repeated over time, can transform how you experience and respond to real-life challenges. Because in the end, mental mastery isn't built in a single breakthrough. It's built through small, intentional choices repeated until they become second nature. Just 5 minutes of focused visualization each day will yield far greater results than a single hour once a week. Consistency is the key that turns mental rehearsal into neural reality. Consider weaving this practice into routines that already exist, perhaps right after meditation, during quiet moments in the morning, or just before sleep, when your mind is naturally more receptive and relaxed. As you continue practicing, something begins to shift. Strategic visualization evolves. It no longer feels like a technique you have to remember. It becomes a natural part of how you prepare for life. It becomes a mental posture, a default mindset for approaching uncertainty, challenge, and stress. And in time, this daily habit transforms the way you experience your toughest moments. Suddenly, what once triggered anxiety now feels like an opportunity. What once felt overwhelming becomes a stage where your highest level of functioning can emerge. You start seeing stress as a signal, not to retreat, but to rise. Because it's in the crucible of crisis, not in comfort, where true character is revealed. The way you respond in those defining moments doesn't just determine how you get through them, it shapes your legacy. Your inner strength becomes your signature. Your calm becomes your credibility. And that calm is what distinguishes leaders. Not just those with titles, but those whose presence alone creates stability. Take Florence Nightingale, for example, during the horrors of the Crimean War. As military hospitals overflowed with wounded soldiers and unspeakable suffering, others recoiled in fear or helplessness. But Nightingale stepped forward with methodical calm. She didn't shout. She didn't panic. She implemented basic sanitation practices, simple, clear, effective changes, in conditions where even surviving was uncertain. The result? Mortality rates dropped dramatically. Lives were saved. And more than that, her presence became a stabilizing force. Soldiers, doctors, and nurses alike looked to her, not because she held a formal title commanding obedience, but because her composure inspired confidence when fear threatened to overtake the room. Ask yourself, in moments of chaos, do you wait for someone to lead, or do you become the one others naturally follow? That's the hidden gift of inner calm. It speaks louder than authority. It draws people in, not through force, but through trust. This pattern isn't limited to legendary figures. It plays out quietly, powerfully, in everyday life and throughout history. Again and again, those who remain centered during chaos naturally rise as anchors for those around them. In families, workplaces, and communities, it's not always the person with the loudest voice or the highest title who leads. Often, it's the one who maintains calm under pressure, the one who doesn't panic when things go wrong. Their steady presence becomes a kind of emotional compass, creating islands of clarity in turbulent waters. And the impact of this composure goes far beyond the moment itself. It creates a ripple effect, one that shapes the emotional climate of the space you're in. When you respond thoughtfully, rather than reacting emotionally, you send a signal. That signal gives others permission to slow down, to think clearly, to choose their next step more intentionally. It shifts the energy of a room. Without saying a word, your presence invites others to rise above reactivity. Your calm becomes contagious. And nowhere is this more important or more deeply absorbed than in the presence of children. Children don't learn how to navigate stress from motivational speeches or textbooks. They learn from watching. They study how you respond when the plan falls apart, when money runs tight, when conflict flares up unexpectedly. In those moments, your response becomes their model. Your tone, your posture, your emotional regulation, all of it writes itself into their internal programming. It becomes the emotional script they'll later draw from in their own moments of pressure. And it doesn't stop with children. Colleagues and friends are also shaped by your energy. In intense meetings, during high-stakes decisions, or in the middle of organizational uncertainty, your presence matters. A calm voice, a composed posture, an unshaken mindset. These things offer an alternative to the anxiety that often fills the room. So ask yourself, when others look to you in tense moments, what do they see? A mirror of panic or a model of possibility? Because in a world full of noise, it is often the quietest, calmest presence that carries the most power. You become a living example that another way is possible. That in a reactive world, composure is still within reach. Not because you were born with it, but because you chose to build it. This capacity for calm isn't some innate gift possessed by a lucky few. It's a skill, a muscle, and like any muscle, it's strengthened through repetition. Each difficult moment becomes an opportunity to train it. Each emotional trigger becomes a chance to pause, to breathe deeply, and to reclaim control over your nervous system. And it's in those small, consistent choices, moment by moment, that true composure is forged. Regular practices like meditation, self-reflection, journaling, or even disciplined physical routines quietly prepare you for the moments that matter most. When life gets loud, your stillness becomes strength. Your training kicks in, and you begin to embody a deeper level of presence. One that doesn't just protect your peace, but transforms how you experience adversity altogether. You'll notice that challenges which once threw you off course for days now feel like passing turbulence. What used to overwhelm you now presents itself as a problem to approach methodically. Not something to fear, but something to manage with clarity and control. Because remember, the ultimate measure of your success is not whether storms come. They will. It's your ability to remain composed within the storm that defines your growth. Everyone faces hardship. Everyone encounters setbacks. But what separates the extraordinary from the average is how they respond. This becomes your legacy, not the titles you earn or the trophies you collect, but the way you show up when things fall apart. Long after achievements fade into memory, people will remember how you made them feel. In meetings, in conflict, in crisis. They will remember the calm you carried when they couldn't find their own. They will recall the clarity you offered, the confidence you inspired, the quiet compassion you extended in a moment of tension. Because by cultivating your own composure, you give others something powerful, a model of what's possible when fear doesn't win. That becomes your greatest gift. Not just for today, but for everyone you encounter, and perhaps even for generations to come. Wishing you strength, peace, and purpose on your journey. And don't forget to subscribe to Mindset Daily for more content to help you build the mindset that transforms your life. Stay healthy, stay grounded, and stay inspired.